Hindi. Okay lang. Tara na.
Malakad pa naman ang magaling.
Oh. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Like in the movies, takes a road less traveled by having most of the show take place in one location. Basically, every episode is set entirely within Carl's apartment. What's really incredible about this setup is that we don't feel like any narrative potential has been lost. Like in the movies, manages to use the bottle episode formula to its advantage. Judith calls their apartment a safe space because, well, it is. This is Carl and Vlad's little pocket of the universe, where they can be completely vulnerable with each other. It's where Carl and Vlad have midnight confessions. It's where Carl first entertains the idea that he may have feelings for Vlad, and where he later acts on those feelings. It's where Carl finally convinces Vlad to dance with him like nobody's watching. So much is contained within the walls of this little apartment complex. The ambiance of Carl's apartment is, well, cozy. When I watch this series, I don't feel like I'm watching a TV show, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm at a friend's house on movie night. It's just an incredibly welcoming and familiar environment. The emotional beats never feel forced, not only because of the intimate setting, but also because of the ridiculous amount of detail written into the script. I usually dislike when shows try to incorporate slang or try to be relatable. It comes off as incredibly synthetic. With that being said, how does Like in the Movies have such authentic dialogue? Seriously, how did they come up with stuff like Christmas is a pagan turned capitalist holiday, don't bring Jesus into this, he's too forgiving to be a Capricorn? It's almost too good. The script is one of the most intelligent and snappy I've seen in forever, and it makes the show that much more enjoyable. There isn't a single line or gesture that feels out of place. The bickering never really comes off as forced either. Again, it doesn't feel like I'm watching a television show. I feel like I walked in on two actual roommates having an argument. That explains why I was completely drawn into their world by episode 2. Authenticity permeates every single aspect of this show, and makes it almost impossible not to fall in love with Carl and Vlad. The stakes in this show aren't very high in the grand scheme of things. Not much really happens outside of Carl and Vlad's relationship development. Yet because these characters are written with such mastery, Carl and Vlad's seemingly insignificant conflict has us on the edge of our seats. Like in the Movies is undeniably a love story, but it's also a love letter to filmmaking itself. There are countless references to classic films within the series, but rather than feeling like nostalgia bait, these Easter eggs feel like an homage to the writers and directors whose talent shaped the medium of film into what it is today. It adds yet another dimension of personality to the show, and will resonate with anyone who appreciates cinema. For the sake of time, I won't list every single Easter egg in the show, but I will mention my absolute favorite.
Tawagin mo lang ako. Tawagin mo ako.
Tara na, Vlad.
Peut-être que c'est elle qui lui a dit. Retourne-toi. Retourne-toi.
I honestly don't know if that was a direct reference to the Portrait of a Lady on Fire or the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice or both, but I'll take what I can get. Even without this connection, however, it still makes for an incredibly powerful emotional climax. And the climax is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to enchantingly beautiful moments. Carl and Vlad being transported from their patio to a luminescent pavilion paired with the swell of the cello still makes me gasp even after watching it 20 times. Arguably, this project had a smaller budget than similar shows airing at the time, but I honestly think this rough around the edges cinematography adds to the overall character of the show. It tells us that this project is first and foremost a deeply personal vision that couldn't afford to be compromised or watered down. And that leads me into my next section. Like in the Movies is written by LGBT people, for LGBT people, with LGBT people. It is refreshingly unapologetic in dismantling common stereotypes, such as the effeminate gay. There are effeminate gay characters in this series, Carl and later his uncle. But rather than being punchlines, there are main characters. Vlad even explains why saying "you don't look gay" is harmful to a large portion of the gay community. Like in the Movies is one of the very few shows in which the diverse breadth of the gay community is represented. BL protagonists are mostly straight passing with a few exceptions. There's nothing wrong with having more masculine gay characters, but characters like Carl and even Vlad are few and far in between. It's so obvious that the director of this series understands the importance of diversity within representation, and for that I am forever thankful. However, in my humble opinion, like in the Movie's greatest strength lies in its conclusion. Let me explain.
Pero kasi, lagi kasi makikisali yung realidad. Doon, wala tayong kawala. Hindi ko sinasabing mag-out ka ha. Sa'yo yan. Sinasabi ko lang, mabuhay ka sa labas. Hawak mo pa ang oras mo, kaya samantalahin mo yun, ha? Please?
For context, inside and outside are the two driving motifs in Like in the Movies. In regards to sexuality, Carl's unwillingness to go outside with Vlad illustrates his hesitancy to go public with their relationship. Carl's apartment is a shield from reality. But where Like in the Movies really shines is in its resolution of this conflict. Like Anna tells Carl in episode 8, everyone deserves that time inside. It's okay to be afraid of your own growth and of coming out. That time is yours and it's valid. But your time inside is only temporary. Hiding isn't living. I've always had respect for film analysis channels like Accented Cinema and my all-time favorite, Breadsword. I was absolutely enamored with the way these people had dedicated hours upon hours to crafting immaculate and thorough dissections of their favorite movies, to the point that I wanted to follow in their footsteps so that I could express my love for my favorite films and TV shows. I had downloaded video editing software and my writing was decent enough, but I was so afraid that people would think my videos were dumb, or that my voice sounded weird, or I'd otherwise make a complete fool of myself in one way or another. I spent months debating whether or not I should just forget about the whole idea and curl up in a fetal position. But then one day I was talking to a friend about how much I loved 3 Will Be Free, and how sucky it was that it didn't get the attention it deserved. Besides a few miscellaneous tweets calling it underrated, it seemed as if the series was already forgotten a mere 8 months after it aired. I said, someone should make a video about 3 Will Be Free, and my friend responded with something like, well, why not you? Why not me? 2 months later, I created this channel and posted my very first video. It took like 15 tries to upload it since GMMTV kept copyright claiming me, and the video itself had a lot of technical issues. There were multiple sections where the audio was fuzzy, and I took a lot of random pauses for some reason, which is probably why it's still my lengthiest video. It got around 20 views, which admittedly isn't much, but that's not my point. The point is, from my time inside, I finally realized that I was ready to take my next step. Just like how Carl's time inside with Vlad helped him realize who he was and what he wanted to do with his life. But like in the movies, doesn't just use the bottle episode formula to inspire character development. It uses it to bring us back to reality, to show us the limitations of living a life entirely on the inside. It's why Carl imagines a better, happier version of himself in an alternate ending where he goes public with his relationship. It's why he finally decides to pursue his dream of filmmaking in the last episode. Living on the outside and embracing potential rejection is just as important as having a safe space. We simply aren't designed to be fully contained in our little pocket of the universe. We're meant to share our talents, our passions, and most importantly, our love with the world, even if that means getting hurt in the process. Like in the movies, doesn't end with Carl and Vlad getting together. Instead, it opts for a more subtle, more ambiguous conclusion. Carl leaves his apartment and meets Vlad at a student film association. Vlad's last words are, "I've been waiting for you." The ending of this series is brilliant for countless reasons, but here's what I love most about it. It tells Carl, and by proxy us, that right now, you may not be ready to step out into the world, whether that means coming out or simply finding your vocation. And that's okay. But when you're willing to take that first step, your Vlad and your Anna and your Judith will be there, cheering you on. Whenever you're ready, come outside. You deserve it. We deserve it. The entire world is waiting for you. So, until then.